Hi, Anders.
Hey, how are you? Good to be here.
Great to have you with us. You've been very active in Connect's ecosystem. We love that. And today we are going to be talking about you, about Foundry Ventures, and what's your thesis and why you chose this particular thesis. So let's go a little bit. Before we do that, let's do a little bit of a rewind and talk about you. Tell us what got you interested in the wonderful world of startups investing.
Yeah, that's a good question. Long and strange path, maybe to some extent. I've been working for some 2 decades now. Spent the first decade in the telecom industry, actually, but it was quite interesting. Sort of early 2000s in the Nordics, a lot of startups. Was a bit of a like a platform type of an ecosystem within telecom those days. A lot of consolidation, super fast sort of tech development from more or less sort of slow 2G to 3G, 4G, 5G. So really, really sort of dynamic kind of an environment. But eventually I needed to do something else. I moved over to sort of consultancy agency space, and then I spent about a decade over there in startups and also in some sort of buy and build type of groups. Anyway, saw the AI wave coming as a lot of people, and just decided that I need to spend some time in there. And given my age, I thought that it was probably better to do it sort of on on the investor or advisor side rather than actually on the grinding side as a founder. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Great to know about the background. And I think telecom used to be so fast. Like comparing with AI, I think we'll start making those comparisons shortly.
Yeah.
But I was also in the 90s and early 2000 in some cases through consulting involved in the telecom sector. And it was like explosive compared to other sectors. Retailing was there, of course. And great to hear about your background in consulting and then the choice of AI wave. If you could also tell us a little bit about Foundry Ventures, like what's the background? What does is it a fund? How does it work? If we can go there.
Yeah, absolutely. So just shortly, I teamed up with the founders of another VC called Luminar Ventures about a year and a half
Mhm.
ago, and together we decided that they need some kind of a partner or vehicle focusing on earlier stages. So they're more of a sort of seed stage fund, and at Foundry we're only doing pre-seed. But also they were interested to partner up with someone specifically focusing on AI, since they sort of realized also that this is a true platform shift, right? So they've invested into Foundry Ventures. We are an investment company working more or less as a typical VC fund, and we will do typically ticket sizes of between 100K to 250K euros. The idea is to do some 10, 15 investments this first year, and we have done 7 so far. So quite active and highly focused. Naturally, only AI plays. We'll sort of go into how we define that, but then also it's naturally a lot of software, I guess.
Okay, very interesting. So your deep connection with Luminar, you said 100 to 250K tickets, 10 to 15 investments targets in 1 year, halfway through almost over there, and only a great thesis. Geographically, what's your scope like?
Yeah, good question. So it's primarily sort of the new Nordic in the sense, right? So
Mhm.
Nordics and Baltics. We will, however, sort of look into a few cases in sort of Northern Europe as well.
Okay.
We have that mandate. Currently, we have actually one investment that we did in the Netherlands, which is actually a surprisingly dynamic and interesting startup, especially Amsterdam. So we'll do that, but primarily Nordics.
Okay. And then from the ticket size, I understand that you are really early stage, but can we kind of peel the onion there a little bit? Like what kind of startups do you have in your portfolios? When you went into them, were they pre-traction, pre-product? Like how does that work on
Yeah.
your portfolio?
Yeah, so this is actually interesting. So when sort of setting this up, I primarily sort of plan to come into a stage and to help these founders sort of nail the product market fit, right? And then also help them with initial commercialization, I would say, right? But pretty early on, right? And we've met a lot of founders. We probably met like 200-300 founders just over the last 6-7 months, right? So we try to keep active, and the vast majority of them are actually further than we thought, right? So that sort of strengthened our thesis that in this platform shift, there are actually some things that will change, not only technically into sort of the products you can build, but also into how the company will develop and scale. So typically right now, we have invested into pre-seed rounds between 250K and maybe €1 million. So we can sort of lead or we can participate. Typically, the teams have at least 3, 4, 5 founders, but surprisingly, then they have some traction, more or less all of them already, right? So they have been able to build a product, not a full suite, right? But some kind of a target audience, and already now that sort of early version of the product create enough value for the customers to pay some for it, right? In some cases, they haven't start paid, but they've signed a lot of contracts, and in some cases, they're already paying for the product.
Okay, amazing. And a couple of questions related to that. Great that you come in to nail the product market fit and commercialization. 200-300 founders, you said. I'm trying to understand, since Luminar is a part of it, which means that if you are investing, then it means that Luminar is part of it. It's not that they can invest separately as well.
Exactly. So the setup now is that Foundry Ventures sort of invest earlier and a lot. And then, clearly the founders have a bit of a benefit that they will be, given that they develop as they plan, right, as a company, they will have a bit of fast track into a seed investment from Luminar. But clearly they're not sort of forced to that. They can pick whatever seed investor they want to. But that's an optionality that a lot of the founders find very interesting, right, given Luminar's reputation. But then we also found a very efficient sort of co-op in terms of deal sourcing. So I ran into a couple of companies, right, that are a bit too late for me, and then I can sort of hand them over to Luminar, and then vice versa. They see a lot of founders that are a bit too early for them. So we can co-op in that sense, right? But from sort of a practical and legal perspective, it's two different companies, and we're not sort of co-investing at all.
Okay, amazing. And then you said your focus is on AI, but AI is very broad as well. Is it that the company from ground up needs to be an AI conceived or a model startup, or is it something that AI can be a part of their overall? How does the current portfolio, or where is your preference? Maybe we can talk about that.
Let's start with the preference, and then we can sort of see the maps that overlaps the portfolio. So we have a couple of theses. One of sort of the core thesis is that software is already now and will increasingly eat into labor. So we are sort of way beyond the stage where typically you had software to simplify workflow. You collected a lot of data into the software, and then maybe you had some dashboards and whatnot over the data, right? So currently software, in order to be competitive, needs to execute on tasks that historically has been done by humans is now then done by software. So that's sort of our foundational thesis, and all the companies we look at and invest in have that in their product. So for us, you need to have an ambition to build a product that clearly can execute on tasks and deliver an order of magnitude higher type of a value to your customer than historically software has been able to do. But then we also want the teams to have a reasonably solid plan into how they should build their company AI native as well, right? So not only an AI native product, but also an AI native company. And for us, that is truly designing your own value chain and your own workflows in your startup in a way where you can have a lot of AI technology supporting each step. that in sort of our thesis, that will enable the founder to scale faster and with way less people than was sort of historically possible. And for us, it's not primarily the thing that you can be less people. It's primarily the thing that you can execute faster with fewer people and more technology. And we think that a lot of the success going forward will sort of boil down to speed, because we believe that it's harder and harder to have sort of solid, old-fashioned type of moats, right? So you need to have speed and execution as one of the core pillars in your moat.
Okay, very interesting point. I hear two things here. Like in the center, there is you are AI native. That's where you're looking for startups. And then you mentioned something very interesting. It's not only on the product side, it's also on how the startup itself works. Like because
100%.
that can create another loop on top of the product, which means that
Yes.
even that development goes even faster, which eventually you are seeking in terms of execute faster. Now, if we look at, like, if we kind of generalize that for our community here, because many founders, I've seen that in Connect community, like 1.5 years ago when I started here, there was hardly any AI. There was some discussion creeping in some of the pitch decks in AI, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
more and more and more is coming, and it is rapidly coming. So
Mm.
for founders who are building AI or AI native startups, what is it that investors in your case, in your circle, typically and VCs look for in AI startups, or what makes a startup a great AI startup?
Yeah, yeah, really good question. So starting off with so from my perspective, which is a bit
Mm.
sort of maybe strange, is that we then sort of look that question for us is sort of twofolded. So that
Okay.
question sort of is concerning the product clearly, as always, right? But for us, that question is sort of really related to the founders and the way they want to build their company as well. Then. So starting off with the product, we believe that in order to be successful now, you need to build together with AI, together with the LLMs, you need to solve a problem, right, in a new way. So we're really looking into how are they using current capabilities in the foundational models to solve a problem, and what's their vision on how they can solve a similar or broader problem even better given future capabilities in these models. So this is super important, right? So it's we're trying to stay away from more of sort of standardized software products with an AI feature. We're really looking for products that are AI native. They're solving a problem that most likely were sort of impossible to solve without this new capability. And then the same then goes for the team. So the idea here is to have a team that sort of view their sort of classical value chain. If you have sort of develop, market, sell, support, and maybe some sort of overhead functions as sort of the model for how a company is structured, right? We're looking for teams that really try to double click on each step and see how can we design this from day one to be less people and more tech, more automated and less manual, right? Smarter, faster, leaner than historically before. And we have a few cases where, especially maybe on the product development or sort of the coding side, just a few people can ship product exceptionally fast these days, right? And I think that we're soon reaching a tipping point where smaller teams will be able to ship faster than medium-sized teams. Maybe not as sort of faster than large teams, but clearly faster than medium-sized teams, right? Which means that you are going from having an asset with a medium-sized team into potentially then having a liability, right?
Very interesting point. Like it's happening so fast. The talk is evolving itself so fast. But really good point. So first point is not an AI add-on, but more like an AI native.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that you talked about. And something very interesting you talked about, like, yes, today you are in the current foundational model, but are you thinking the next AI itself, as well as a startup creating team? And then when you come to this team, the team needs to have an on the go evolution efficiency to run faster, as you're saying. So
Excellent.
they need to be running live, thinner, leaner, and improving these processes with the help of AI going forward. So very interesting in the comparison with smaller and medium-sized team, which brings us to something which just before the call we were discussing a point like are the dynamics of building and scaling startups changed? Are we living in a radically different world today? Do we have a fundamentally new breed of startups? Are they actually startups or should be something? Because we are, as human beings, we were running small businesses, shutter down, business closed. Then corporations, second level scaling structures, which you could go. Geography was a main thing. Product addition, diversifications, those were the tools of secondary growth. Third was startup, where rapid tech scaling came in, and now there is a tech level too. So just trying to understand, are we in a fundamentally different world now?
Yeah, and I think that that question is actually important to ask, not maybe daily, but at least sort of weekly or monthly, because it's really, you and me, right? We've been around a couple of years, and it's really easy to get carried away, right? And we've seen some things like maybe internet and cloud and mobile really take off, right? And then we have a
Yeah.
few other things that, I don't know, metaverse and whatnot, that didn't take off, right? So it's an important question. So I mean, I spent some time thinking about this and meeting teams, and to me, it's crystal clear that this is sort of the next paradigm shift. It's a new platform, and I think that for us, it's the proof of that is the fact that it affects sort of all these stages in what running a company is, right? So if we just sort of try to imagine that we had this AI technology and the only thing it could help with was actually producing code, right, helping engineers, that would be quite a massive takeaway, right? But maybe not a fundamental platform shift. But these days you have that, but then you also have, you can produce great content, you can market your product in a new way, you can sell it in a new way, you can have automated support and onboarding into your product, and you can even have invoicing or verification, reconciliation. You can recruit team members into a new way into your team. You can more or less do whatever you need to do in order to sort of build and run a company into a new way. And I think that unless all those things are wrong or just overhyped, then I think it's clearly sort of a new platform shift. And I think that that's a massive opportunity, right, for founders. But I think everyone also needs to think about the threats here, right? Because if you're not on board with that concept, and if you're not fully embracing that fact, right, and then sort of building a potentially AI native product, but you're sort of building it into a company the old way, then I think the likelihood of success is way smaller, unfortunately, than it used to be a couple of years ago, right? So you need to really embrace this, right, in order to have a reasonable success likelihood, I think.
That's a very nice word that you talked about, embrace, like, and with technologies or anything, because one of the first reactions, we are trained because we were hunters, we were living in forests, so fear is a major trigger in our mind. So immediately something pops up in front of us and we'll say, oh wow. So our first reaction is fear. The brain has that programmed, so that's how we react. And you talked about the word embrace, which I think beautifully puts in how we react to new concepts, new technologies, new fundamental ways of living, for example. And there's been a lot of debate on whether Europe or Nordics or Sweden is fast enough. If it's a race, and are we fast enough? I don't know. That's slightly removed from the startup discussion we are having. Generally, as if we take Nordics as a lump,
Yeah.
do you think from your perspective that we are moving fast enough the way we should be moving in this technology direction?
Yeah, so this is a sort of a classical two-folded thing, right? Or you really need to have sort of two thoughts in your head at the same time. So
Yeah.
I just must say that I'm super impressed about the speed and sort of the startup ecosystem and all these founders that I meet in the Nordics. It's really dynamic. It's really fast paced, and a lot of teams are building really awesome stuff, right? So we must be doing a couple of things in parallel, right? I believe. I haven't been to all places around the world, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're clearly sort of top 5 around the world in terms of regions for entrepreneurs in this new AI way. Clearly, right? Which is amazing. But then at the same time, we probably need to move faster as well as a society on a couple of different fronts. I think one is that we need to be able to support these founders even better, right? Maybe from a regulatory perspective with support, maybe from a clearer vision on where we as a society want to go in terms of data privacy or security or regulations in general, right? So founders know what type of an ecosystem they're building in. But maybe also in terms of being founder friendly from a investment perspective or a grants perspective and whatnot. Right? So we can clearly do more, but we just need to recognize as well that we're doing a lot of things really good. And I think that maybe honestly I don't really know the reason for that, but I think that we in the Nordics recognize that we're pretty small from a global perspective, and we sort of realized early on that we will not be able to sort of be in the core AI race, right? We will not be able to build our own foundation models. Probably not that we'll be able to compete, right? We don't have the right amount of cash conceptually, right? So we sort of initially went for the application layer or very sort of near customer problem type of a layer early on, which I think gave us a bit of a head start. And then I think people have been inspired by earlier successes from entrepreneurs, right, in the Nordics as well, and have the ambition to aim global initially as well, right, which is a big strength.
Very interesting points on founder support you mentioned, and great to know. I think I came to Nordics like 11 years ago, and I see when I see Nordic founders, I think the word that comes to my mind is we are great builders. So this is a building ecosystem, which means if there is a new technology starting, we are the perfect match for something like that. That's why we are builders, and we'll build maybe hundreds, thousands, millions of ideas around this. I think we are in the perfect position to kind of be with the AI wave as it's evolving. But you also mentioned like the founder support ecosystem. My question is, and maybe that is not a relevant question for you, but maybe that's just a discussion question for us to commonly kind of find out. Who needs to have the hat of founder support? Is that hat resting on the investor side? Is it resting on the government side? Is it resting on ecosystems like Connect, like Almi's? Where does the responsibility lie? Or is it that founders need to have a strong peer support network?
Yeah, so I think that it's all of the above, right?
Okay.
It's a combination of all of the above, and I think that that's potentially the complexity sort of within it, right? That this needs to be to some extent sort of aligned, right, in order to cover a couple of different grounds, and then or sort of pieces of the puzzle, and then build a great puzzle together. But I think the core responsibility is from sort of the investor side, right? We need to, as we have then potentially been able to do from sort of a founder entrepreneurial perspective, really foster amazing risk takers, hardworking, forward-leaning type of entrepreneurs. We probably need to continue to develop sort of the Nordic and European investor community likewise, right? So I think that we probably have a bit of a disadvantage toward the US and maybe China on that perspective, that to some extent they are willing to bet more earlier, lose more, but then also be able to sort of win more, right? So maybe most of that sort of responsibility, I think, lies within the investor community.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Let's go to, as you're saying, investor community on the investor side. Like typically, general rule of thumb for early stage startups have been investors. I've done thousands of interviews, and generally the things that emerge is there has to be a big dam, there has to be a defensible tech, there has to be a team that can take that tech forward.
Yeah.
How does that decision matrix look like for AI startups? What is the core, which is the focus of an investment decision?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a full sort of week type of a deep dive in discussion. My take on it is that it's not completely new, clearly,
Hmm. Okay.
but that it has somewhat shifted over the last couple of years. One thing has not shifted at all, right, which is team. So I think team is exceptionally important. 100% more important, so to some extent more important now than historically, right? Because the concept here is that maybe you can build more with less people, right? So every individual contributes more to the success in a
Hmm.
small team than in a larger team, right? So hence the importance is even higher. So team is really important. The team needs to know the space that they're building within, right? What's the problem, and how
Yeah.
do you know the problem? They need to be able to connect very early on to customers or sort of design partners in that community, right?
Hmm.
Because it's completely impossible these days to build something sort of in your dorm room or in a garage 5 years and then sort of come out and hope that it works, right? You need to build together with customers, and you need to sort of solve the problems together with them and base your product on real-time data, etc., etc. So team is super important. Strangely enough, I think that maybe TAM is less important.
Okay.
I mean, clearly, it's never bad to have a good sized sort of addressable market, but I think it's more important to start off with a potentially sort of high value but pretty
Hmm.
narrow workflow or niche or problem set early on. So rather than sort of building something massively horizontal, works for everyone, but sort of potentially face the risk of being, pretty good for everyone, you
Hmm.
should 100% focus on being amazing for very few people. So get being sort of loved by a very small set of customers or sort of people early on. Best case by doing focusing on a niche, and
Okay.
then sort of branch out, right? Expand from there. So that's really important as well, because it's competition all over the place. It's easier to build products. It's easier to build sort of
Hmm.
companies than before, right? Which means that if you're sort of running on all kinds of different problems at the same time, there's a massive risk that you'll sort of solve all of them and then you'll be outcompeted in all niches, right? So team, and then focusing on this sort of niche problem is very, very important. And then, as said, right, things are developing way faster now than they used to be. So you need to have a bit of a plan on how can you then, together with a few early customers, build this product and then ship it or sort of give it to the customers, let
Hmm.
them use it, and then get their feedback and their love, right? Because it's historically in seed stage, you spend a lot of time talking to early customers, right? And get their feedback and whether they love the product or not, right? All that thing has moved down to pre-seed now. So I
Hmm.
think that very few people, especially within B2B, but most likely sort of B2C as well, will sort of invest a couple of €100,000 now without having sort of any sort of customer feedback, right? So you need to focus on that as well. So which means that you need to be faster, you need to be more focused, you need to be more embedded with customers than you had to a couple of years ago.
Very good point. So again, I'm typically summarizing so that it becomes all very clear
That's good
for
for
us.
me as well, right? So
Yeah.
summarize.
No, really good. You actually put team above TAM. Great to know. And I think
Yes.
you linked it with what you were saying. Rather than creating something horizontal, create something vertical of high value. You use the word not feedback customer love. So I think the word choice is very important. Like somebody absolutely is in love with what you're building. So I think that's the first thing. When you are even on landing on the moon, you first need to put the foot down and then you can walk. Problem with horizontal product building is that you are trying to run in all directions and you can't even control the weight.
Yeah.
So really, really great points over here. Um,
And maybe adding to that, right?
yeah.
So historically, there's been, and maybe still are today, a lot of focus on moats, right? Or how do you build, vallgravar, as we say in Swedish, right? To all potential sort of existing and potential future competitors, right? I'm not that focused on that, actually. Sounds strange, but I think that sort of going forward, the core pillar of the moat will be speed of execution.
Okay.
You'll sort of you layer the moat, right? So the moat will be layered, and then the sum of those layers will potentially be equally strong as, a patent or a unique data set or whatnot used to be a couple of years ago. But you need to have a decent vision on how those sort of layers could be designed, right, in order to get an investment from me. You don't need to sort of solve all of it before, right? But you need to have a bit of a vision on where they are, right? Because if you haven't thought at all about that, then that might be a challenge.
That's a very interesting point because there's a lot of debate. Like AI has made it a level playing field. Tech is no longer a moat anymore. So I think your discussion over there is very interesting, and I think founders need to start thinking, like as you're saying, in layers of moats. As you're saying.
And I can give an example, right? So one of the teams
Mhm.
we have invested in is called Argaton. They have like a voice AI product that they sell into financial services and
Mhm.
telecom operator type of segments, right? And what this product does is that it sort of coaches the sort of headset type of customer support into be able to sort of cross sell and upsell better, right? So rather than having someone sort of running around between a few hundred customer service agents, you have this AI supporting everyone individually, right? Works pretty well. But what they're trying to do is that they're sort of trying to, clearly build a strong product, right?
Mhm.
But they try to combine that with a focus on initially telecom operators and then financial services only, sort of two verticals. They're trying to invest a lot into building a brand into these verticals. They're focusing a lot on how they can not only solve sort of the first problem, but now continue to ship more and more
Mhm.
features into the product really, really fast. An example is that one feature that financial services really want is a bit of a compliance type of feature, right? So this product is listening into all customer conversations all day, right? And then when they sort of hear some type of a conversation going south from a compliance perspective, the AI can immediately, sort of alert, right, and highlight that, and then you can sort of coach that agent to doing it right the next time. And then they're able to ship that product, right? And now they're focusing a lot on sort of the commercialization, right? Meeting a
Okay.
lot of customers, right? To be able to build a bit of a velocity into that process as well, right? So just out of those 2, 3, 4, 5 different things, right? Maybe you can combine them into this dream scenario, right, where you have
Okay.
an escape velocity into your growth, right? You have a velocity that fast enough that sort of makes competitors really struggling to pick up, right? Because when they've
Mhm.
sort of gotten to the stage you are now, then you've already moved to the next stage, right? So that's I think the right approach. But then clearly it's easiest to say, right? But then you need to execute on.
Yeah. Interesting. Anne has a question. I
Yeah.
think with AI native tools generating some of the software, what is your view on who owns the IP, or will that also become irrelevant?
Good question. Really good question. It's I don't sort of foresee a future where it will become irrelevant, but I think that it's already now reasonably sort of clear that that the buyer of the service, right, the customer to Cursor, is owning the IP of the things they build with Cursor, right? And I think that The only thing you sort of don't own, right, is if you sort of use the tool for free, right? So then you sort of your give back rather than cash is that they can do whatever they want with the stuff that you build. So I'm not that sort of super worried about that, but I think that you know, over time it might be even more sort of important on the ownership here, right? Because I've seen some cases already now where you have an AI agent testing out the software, conceptually just trying it out, recording whatever they do, and then they can sort of build the same code and sort of replicate the software. Which means that if you have a HubSpot and then you have an AI agent spending a week testing everything in HubSpot and then building a new HubSpot and giving it away for free in some kind of an, I don't know, ad type of a business model, then I think HubSpot would probably do something about it.
Okay, great. We have more questions coming in. First, I think Patrick has a question directed to me. Do I need a Connect account or something to access that link for startups raising? No, it's open. So current startups, everybody who needs to be screened needs to go through that link. So if you are first time applying to Connect, you need to go through that process and apply. We first need to see your application, your pitch. We cannot come back. So it's very simple. Just go to the link and send in your application. Then Gabriela has a question. I think I was also coming to that question somewhere, but we'll wait and first take this question. So Gabriel's question is, what is your take on singlepreneurs or solopreneurs given the amount of AI agents that can be used to automate mostly marketing, sales, social media? Would you invest in that kind of team?
Very good question. So, I mean, you sort of, one perspective, it could be that sort of the solo entrepreneur, right, would be sort of the wet dream for a VC. So it's I mean, talk about being able to ship fast and run it lean, but you know, it's not the no-go for us or for me. But I still think that there's a lot of value in the teamwork and sort of in the dynamic that you can build within a team, even though it's a small team, right? 3, 4, 5 people. I think that you a couple of more set of eyes on a specific problem typically sort of improves it by an order of magnitude, which makes it sort of a good value add to have a team rather than being alone. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if you have sort of a unicorn company of 1 people within a couple of years.
Very interesting point, and I think that's also a major debate around which, and we'll probably see something very, very quickly on that side as well. Patrick has a question: how far along in a product market fit for an AI startup is reasonable before looking to raise capital? Does the amount of free paying users make a large difference from your perspective?
Another really good question. So it's not super critical for us, right? We can move in pretty early on and take a bet if we truly believe the team is right, and we can be even somewhat sort of later where you have already $1 million ARR and whatnot. But I think that, you know, if I was a founder myself these days, I would start off with making sure that I sort of have the problem definition reasonably correct, because I've used to work there or whatnot, right? So I would spend some time in trying to sort of validate that, and then I try to find at least 1 or 2 more sort of co-founders, and then 1 or 2 angel investors, unless I have some cash myself. But then I would be focused on really grinding, spending 6 to 12 months, trying to not figure out the details of my hypothesis, but rather trying to go all the way into building something that is highly niched, that creates some value for a few customers, ship it to those customers, not necessarily get them to pay for it, but at least get them to promise that they're able to answer a call from a few VCs on whether the product works or not. I think that would be sort of dimension of a VC making a few phone calls to customers to try to sort of validate whether the startup is delivering value or not. I think that's the most important thing that has sort of moved from seed or, way back, maybe even sort of A round, right? All the way down to pre-seed now. Just because of the fact that you can build and ship so exceptionally fast.
Okay. Amazing. Let's take a few more questions. There's a lot which are coming on the panel side and some on the main chat. So, Anders, what's your opinion on using advisors or advisory boards to guide entrepreneurs, both national, internationally? I could be as mentors or door openers to customers, etc.
Yeah, maybe we're actually touching on something that also now gradually seems to be changing. So in terms of how should you position your company, what type of investor should you look for, how should you sort of handle partner, the more classical stuff. I think you can benefit a lot from advisors that's been around a couple of times before. How should you sort of set it up from a legal perspective, negotiate with vendors, stuff like that, right? But I think you should be somewhat cautious in only depending on advisors, even though I'm somewhat of an advisor myself, right? Because one of the things we do within our portfolio of 7 companies now is really trying to get them to support each other, right? Or at least build a community where they have efficient communication channels within for big and small type of problems. Because being able to build with other builders in the same era seems to be really important these days, because there's a lot of standardized problems that everyone needs to solve, right? And some of them are really hard to solve, right? And if you can get a good direction from someone, then you can save a lot of time and money. And it's hard for me, for example, sort of a seasoned advisor, to know what to do, right? Because things have moved too fast, right? Like, how important is it to have sort of a multi LLM type of a setup into my product early on?
Okay.
I don't know. A lot of the teams building product right now, they do know, right? So you need to combine, I think, a community of like-minded builders with a set of advisors, ideally, right, pretty early on, to really try to cut corners and increase speed.
I think that goes back to what you were talking about, like the velocity, the speed that we are talking about. I think advisors are still very important, but advisors were part of an era where somebody had learned something over years, could come back and contribute to a traditional process. If innovation is now happening, as we were talking, weeks, months cycle, everybody is almost learning at the edge. So so nobody is on the other side of the edge to teach back. Or maybe it's the scale that makes a difference. So maybe OpenAI can teach a startup like how you can, so because they are operating at a different scale. I think the time advantage is gone in terms of learning. So founders right now are at the absolute edge of technology, creating something in their domain. So I think that is a very interesting point, and that completely changes how traditional advisor dynamics, at least for AI native, maybe it still works amazingly in deep tech, for example. So very, very interesting point. And I think there are a few points, some questions coming from Jagdish, Pascal. These are more questions.
And I can just, sorry, Naimul, let's just do one example. So this week, right, OpenAI launched this open source model, OSS, open source, open weight model, right? And I don't know the ins and outs of it. I haven't tried it. I don't know the details, right? But it seems to be sort of capability-wise in par with a few, like the O3 reasoning model, right? And it's hard for me to even try to sort of grasp how much that changes, right? If you're able to run an O3 type of 11 model on your MacBook, right? Your Mac Mini, I mean, that's conceptually like running it on edge, right? But it's a very, very capable model. You can build all kinds of product, right? All of a sudden, it's amazing.
Amazing, amazing. We have a few questions, as I
Yeah,
was saying, coming for vertical. So Jagdish and Pascal have sent in their questions, and they are. So what I understand is within AI-driven solutions, they're checking what's the appetite for HR tech versus healthcare versus fintech. So within the AI native space, are there certain verticals or some spaces which are hotter than the others or
yes,
colder?
yes, it is. It is. I think that we see a lot of things in marketing,
Mm,
HR, and education. So amazing things are being built in there, but it's really, really, really crowded.
yeah.
And in terms of looking at our deal flow, right? It's heavily sort of skewed towards those sectors, right? Compared to the potential value creation you can do, right? Compared to sort of the size of those niches, right? So I would be somewhat sort of reluctant to build there or sort of invest there, even though we are, right. But we're super strict, right. But then you have other ones, right. I think that everything related to medtech, you
Mm,
have long sales cycles, there's a lot of compliance and whatnot, but the value you can add is just massive. You're solving a societal problem at the same time as you can really sort of capitalize on something. And you know, you can look at Tandem Health right now, really running with speed, right? But to be honest, I mean, they have a strong product ambition and vision, but the current product is reasonably I was about to say thin. It's not thin. It's reasonably, focused, right?
mm.
You're helping them with, note taking and a bit more. There are thousands of those sort of problems out there, sort of in that space, and they're short of people. They have solutions today that are poor, and what. So that's a space I really would sort of look into as an example, right?
And very rightly said, I think. I think you mentioned three sectors which could be overcrowded: marketing, HR, and education. I think these are human spheres of conversations, language, and they are very closely linked to. And AI in the current phase for consumers, as we as users are using the language side most of the AI.
Mhm. Yeah,
So we are
yeah.
using. So probably that's where a lot of solution creation is happening because we are very conversant with AI technology. So maybe it's harder to build AI native in deep tech, for example, right now. Or other, so, but then that's the space where there'll be a lot of advantage if you do something like that. So
Yeah,
great
yeah.
point over there.
Maybe just adding to that, I will also look into what type of capability uplifts are sort of happening when in the model, right? So we have this
Mm,
massive calculus or calculation uplift just sort of within the last month, where all of a sudden the model went from being challenged with how much is 3 + 3 - 3. All of a
mm,
sudden it was sort of a, I don't know, bronze medal in international math Olympiad, right? All of a
yeah.
sudden, and that unlocks a massive set of products, right? When it's able to calculate really accurately.
Awesome. We'll take one or two more questions. We are
Yeah.
now edging on the time of the talk now. So Leonard, where I can find the recording after webinar, we'll let you know in about a week's time. Typically, the talks come out. What's the so Leonard, you'll get a notification through Connect's the emails. And what big problem would you love to see solved with AI?
Yeah, it's somewhat sort of related to the discussion around medtech. So I would really love for teams to maybe have a bit of a structured approach to deciding on the problem to solve, right? So
Mm,
if someone would say to me that, all right, we sort of started to look into different types of problems, and then we realized that we had this massive societal problem, which also is a big market. And then we sort of double clicked on that, and then we found this sort of niche problem to start off with. Or if we say we have this, we started off with looking at where does a lot of people work, maybe white collar work today globally? And where do we think that it's going to be a bit of a challenge to recruit over the coming decades? You'll have sort of a shortage of white collar labor. So we started to build this, right, in order to be able to not only replace white collar labor, but bridge the potential gap we see going forward. Those kind of sort of structured approaches would really resonate with me. And there are tons of them out there, right?
Awesome. I'll pick one last question. So, because running a VC firm is a lot about decisions, right decisions, and then betting on decisions, because then those decisions can result in a multiple X in terms of how startups are built and what kind of pods are coming in. How does the profusion of AI, does it make the job of due diligence harder? Example of that is up to 2 3 years ago, you could judge the caliber of a startup on a range of A to F just by looking at the pitch deck. Now, probably startups are moving very close to a pitch deck parity because there's a lot of AI tools available on communication side, storytelling side,
Yes.
presentation side of MVPs. So maybe that's where it's not A to F anymore. You are stuck with kind of micro analyzing A, B, and B plus pitch levels. So what implication does it have on due diligence and what level? So how do you ensure that the technology that you're going to invest, you have properly investigated that it is resident? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been I think it's way harder now because, as you say, the pitch deck looks a lot the same, right? I mean, I use a lot of AI tools to review the pitch deck and audit them and score them and whatnot, but they don't really work, right? Because the guys building the pitch deck have used the same tool. And then at the same time, it's way harder because it's not a play where you need to find this, niche patent or amazing data set or moat, right? It's a play where you need to understand whether the founders are able to combine X, Y, Z, and a few more things into something, and then into some perspective or into a competitive type of a product and setup, and then whether they're able to run fast enough to deliver on that. So in practice, for me, it's less and less and less about the decks and more about the meetings, which means that I need to take a lot of meetings. I like it a lot, but it's harder in the sense that you cannot cheat, right? In terms of spending time in Excel and looking at the decks. You need to meet the founders 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, right? Even though it might be a case that's not super interesting, because there are some caveats and interesting things in sort of the team, right? That all of a sudden can make it super interesting. So that's why I think, serious VCs and all types of investors these days need to spend a lot of time, right, in meetings, digital and physical ones, to try to sort of figure out whether there's something there or not.
Awesome. I think that's a great point. Maybe I need to think a little bit tonight and create some product around that. But that's a brilliant thought. Like, how do you cross the madness of pitch decks and meet the humans behind the pitch decks? Because that's where the due diligence will really happen. But great points, Anders. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us today.
Super happy, and thanks a lot, Naimul, for everything you're doing and the team is doing for the startup ecosystem. It's just it's amazing.
Thank you so much.